Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to your own radio station, Ravenshaw Radio, Odisha's first campus community radio. And for today's show, I am your RJ. I am RJ Mayank.
And I am RJ Alisha. Jallianwala Bagh Massacre, an incident of the 20th century which shook the Indian people to the core. On April 13, 1919, thousands of innocent lives were laid down in Jallianwala Bagh, Amritsar. The British government, being determined to suppress the non-cooperation movement, opted to lathi charge and fire upon the agitated masses.
The Punjab region, particularly Amritsar, witnessed the worst of it. Gandhiji, along with two other leaders, Dr. Saifuddin Kichlu and Dr. Satyapal, were arrested on 10th April 1919 to protest against this. People definitely assembled at Jallianwala Bagh on 13th April 1919. General Dyer, the then British military officer, ordered his troops to start firing without any warning on the unnamed crowd, closing the only way out of the park.
Even today, narrating this incident gives me goosebumps. This simply brought to light the cruelty of the Britishers which they have always possessed towards the Indians. Let's now know in depth explanation from our amazing guest present here.
So, our guest for today is Professor Dr. Priyadarshi, Associate Professor of Department of History, Ravenshaw University. Sir, we welcome you to our radio.
Thank you so much, Mayank and Alisha.
So, sir, we start our question session. Our first question is, could you please enlighten us for the background and pre-incidents which led to the massacre?
Okay, I must thank Ravenshaw Community Radio for inviting me for this wonderful talk. Thank you, Alisha. Thank you, Mayank. And this is indeed a great privilege on my part to share my ideas on Jallianwala Massacre today among students and all my listeners. Well, to start with the background of the Jallianwala Massacre, let me locate what is this incident all about. Now, this is 1919, just immediately aftermath of the First World War. And the political landscape was highly intense with the World War ending and the nationalist activities are picking up. And this is a time when you see the British government has become very nervous and they just managed to win the war. And this is a time when exactly you see British imperialism began to slowly come down, and this is the beginning of the end of the great British Empire. So the Jallianwala Massacre occurred exactly on 13th April 1919 when around 20,000 people were crowded or were there to attend a protest meeting in Jallianwala Bagh in Amritsar. And General Dyer came there without any warning, fired at them, killing around actually 12,000 people, though officially 379 people were recorded to be killed and many more were fatally injured. Now this particular incident shocked the conscience of the entire nation. So what happened in Jallianwala Bagh was not unrelated to other developments. For example, if you look at the background of Jallianwala Massacre, you will find this was the height of British brutality and racial arrogance. This is a time when you see that the colonial or anti-colonial nationalist activities were intense because people were feeling restive because of four reasons. Point number one, Gandhi has already come back from South Africa after say 20 years or 21 years of existence and leading the people of Indian origin in South Africa, and now in 1915, and then a series of developments which are taking place during the war period, First World War period, which were were responsible for the British to respond to the nationalist struggle in a very brutal manner. And Jallianwala Massacre was a typical example of the repressive policies of the British government to quell down the nationalist agitation, especially in sensitive areas like Punjab, Maharashtra, Bengal, and in our case here in Amritsar. And if you look at the background of this particular event, you will understand that people were restive, people are very angry with the British government because of 3 to 4 reasons. Point number 1, you will find that the British government promised that they will provide political reforms and many political concessions after the world is over. World War was over. But finally, what came out after the World War was the Chelmsford-Montague reforms, which is popularly called the Government of India Act 1919. In that particular act, the British government disappointed the nationalist aspirations. In fact, Gandhiji said, I asked for bread in bended knees and I got stoned. So, there's a lot of disappointment over the kind of political reforms that was promised by the Government of India Act 1990. That is one reason why people are not happy with British response. Number 2, you find the Rowlatt Act. There's a very draconian legislation called the Rowlatt Act. The Rowlatt Act was also called the Black Act because this particular act was, this legislation was floated basically to arrest the trend of serious anti-colonial resistance. And Rowlatt Act is called Black Act because it is said it was characterized by no vakil, no dalil, no appeal, meaning that anybody could be arrested without a proper legal warrant and no lawyer will be allowed to plead for the arrested people. So British government showed its undemocratic temper by basically trying to arrest anyone who was suspicious of anti-British activities. And many people were arrested in this by using the Rowlatt Law or Rowlatt Act. Now Saifuddin Kichlu and your Dr. Satyapal, two very famous Congress leaders of Punjab, Amritsar, were also arrested. And people were very angry that why 2 popular local Congress leaders were arrested. So there is a lot of antipathy for the British, and people were there to protest against the arrest of 2 Punjabi leaders. And that is the reason why so many people had assembled in Jallianwala. This one. The third thing is about the Khilafat issue. You know, Khilafat issue means that how the Sultan of Turkey was the religious head of all Muslims over the world. And since Turkey was fighting against the English in the First World War, after the defeat of Turkey, England wanted to abolish the Khalifahood or what you call the Caliphate of the Sultan of Turkey. And this offended the Muslim sentiment all over the world, including the Indian Muslims. So, there are 2 Ali brothers called Muhammad Ali and Shaukat Ali, and these 2 Ali brothers, they wanted to wage a movement against the British to restore the prestige of the Caliph of the Sultan of Turkey. And therefore, this Khilafat issue was another reason for people to also become very restive. And Gandhiji saw the Khilafat issue as a wonderful opportunity to bring the estranged Muslim brethren into the fold of the Congress politics. So, to bring closer the cooperation of Indian National Congress and the Muslim League, Gandhiji wanted to use the Khilafat issue as a plea to bring and foster and to promote Hindu-Muslim unity. Okay, and so these are the reasons why you see the country was very restive, and Gandhi had already led 3 local movements and become very popular: Champaran Satyagraha, the Kheda Satyagraha, and the Ahmedabad Mill Strike. Gandhi has emerged as a very popular leader using his unique struggle of freedom, unique satyagraha, and then the whole country was gearing for the fast mass movement under Gandhi's leadership and under Congress leadership. So this was the background, and suddenly when such a thing happened that so many innocent people were killed in cold blood in Jallianwala Bagh, in Amritsar, suddenly it was the last straw, and whole country was shocked by this brutality and the kind of racial arrogance exhibited by the British government in this case of massacring innocent people without warning them, and this was the bloodiest episode in the history of British India. And definitely the Jallianwala massacre was a reference point, was a turning point in the Indo-British relationship. Thereafter, the Indian people could never excuse the British government for launching such a brutal atrocity on the innocent people of this country.
So, you mentioned about Dr. Satyapal and Kichlu. So, we would like to know about what influence they had on masses then.
Well, Alisa, Dr. Satyapal was a physician and also a nationalist. He was a part of the Punjab Congress during that time, which is a part of the Indian National Congress. And Dr. Saifuddin Kichhi was actually basically he was a Kashmiri fellow, and he had come. He was a lawyer. So both these two leaders were very, very influential in local Punjab Congress, and they were great comrades of Gandhi in the struggle against the British government, and they had a lot of popular appeal. And therefore, when they were arrested, naturally, people of Punjab in general were very, very angry, and they thought this is something undemocratic, and they were there to protest the arrest of these two Punjabi local Congress leaders, Dr. Satyapal and Dr. Saifuddin Kichhi.
Sir, while I was researching for the topic, I came across an interesting figure named Michael O. Dyer. Sir, would you like to tell me what was his role in Jallianwala Bagh Massacre and what was his relation with General Dyer?
Okay, this is a very interesting question. Let me tell you, many people have a misconception about these two Dyers. There are two Dyers during 1919 in the context of Jallianwala Massacre. One is Michael O. Dyer. Michael O. Dyer was a civil servant who was posted as the Lieutenant Governor of Punjab from 1912, and he was supposed to retire in March 1919. Okay, he only got a 2-month extension till May, and during that 2-month extension of the civil servant's tenure as Lieutenant Governor, such a massacre took place. So he was primarily responsible for launching this ghastly attack on the people. This was Michael O. Dyer. But actually the person who ordered firing on the innocent citizens of Amritsar, his name was called Brigadier or Colonel Raglan Dyer. And this Dyer was actually responsible for ordering the killing of so many people. So there are two Dyers. And this General Dyer was a military man. He is a man who belonged to the British Indian Army officer. Whereas this Michael O. Dyer was a civil servant, was the then Lieutenant Governor of Punjab. Both were responsible, but the man on the spot was General Dyer, who was ordered by Michael O. Dyer to go for such kind of a teaching a lesson to the agitated or ultra-nationalist people of Punjab or Amritsar. So there are two Dyers. That is how they are related. One was a civil servant, Michael O. Dyer, and the other one was a military man, General Dyer, who was actually, and interestingly about them is, both of them are born in 1864, and General Dyer, who died on the, who ordered firing, died in 1927 because of a heart stroke and paralytic attack. He was the main man responsible for this brutality. But Michael O. Dyer died later on in 1940 when Uddham Singh, the great Indian Punjab revolutionary, killed him while he was attending a public meeting in London.
Okay, sir. So, sir, we would like to know why General Dyer ordered for an open fire without any warning, and why that the British government didn't take any action against General Dyer at that time.
Alisa, this is a very interesting question again. Whatever little research I have made on General Dyer from reading his biographer and all that, I have gathered some information. For your information, let me tell you, firing without any prior warning was a motivated action on the part of General Dyer, because Punjab of those days were burning with revolutionary fury and power, and people were becoming so restive because prior to the happening exactly D-Day on 13th April, when such a ghastly event took place, on 10th April, there was a big agitation going on in Amritsar. And in that agitation, people began to attack the symbols of colonial hegemony, colonial power. The banks, European funded banks, and the public buildings and kacheris and the courts and all. And British government was trying to really quell down that rebellion. And therefore, martial law was proclaimed. These are all happening in the context of a Ral attack, because anybody could be arrested. So the British was quite angry and quite decisive in their actions to suppress and quell any activity that was challenging the power and the might of the British Empire in the particular area, just like Punjab. Because Punjab was really burning, because the Punjabis have a tradition of martial tradition, and every house of Punjab sent one or the other fellow to the defense forces. And so they expected a lot of things from the British. And therefore, this Punjabis, which had Hindu population, Sikh population, Muslims, and it's a very multicultural society. And it was very active in the Ghadharite movement. Ghadar party was established in 1912-13, where most of the social base of the Ghadar party were from Punjab. And these guys were greatly influenced by the rising Punjabi nationalism, or the Indian nationalism, let us call it. And Uddam Singh was a product of that milieu, that revolutionary milieu. So when you say why General Dyer ordered an open firing, because it was premeditated. They wanted to create a moral effect so that people won't dare to challenge the government or take anything. And let me also tell you one more thing. Before 13th of April, on the day when Jallianwala massacre occurred, on 10th April, before a couple of days, a lady British missionary was manhandled by the revolutionary mob. And therefore, a message went to the British people that our women are not safe in the streets of India, in the streets of Amritsar. Therefore, there was a lot of reaction in the official circles that a lady missionary, English lady missionary, was badly attacked when she was riding a bicycle in the streets of Amritsar. And therefore, so whatever comes from officially, now it appears that they wanted to really kill many people to create a moral effect, quote unquote, on the people, so that people don't dare to challenge. And the British government did take some measures. For example, the Hunter Inquiry Commission was instituted to look into the horrors, or what really prompted Dyer to open firing at a defenseless crowd. So, and in the House of Commons, in the House of Lords, in both the houses of the British Parliament, this was hotly debated. In fact, the House of Commons condemned General Dyer's action, whereas the House of Lords really celebrated and justified the action of Dyer. So there is a multiple response. In India, everybody condemned what happened in Amritsar, or what happened in the context of Jallianwala Bagh. But the British government did institute an inquiry, and there was a lot of mixed response from the British middle class and the British citizens from Britain.
Sir, you mentioned about Hunter Commission, which brings on to my next question. Sir, what was Hunter Commission and what was his role during and after that massacre?
Mayank, you see, Hunter Commission was instituted to look into what really led to such a ghastly event, which made British administration very unpopular. And there one member, Mr. Setal Bagh, who was also very critical of General Dyer. I think the whole Hunter Committee gave a report condemning and bringing out why it happened. But the role was, Hunter Commission did not satisfy the Indian political aspirations. People were very angry, and if you look at the response to Hunter Commission, many people criticized that also. But Hunter Commission was an official attempt to explain away the incident from official point of view. And but Hunter Commission definitely failed far short of its expectations.
So can you please tell about the other reports which questioned the report of Hunter Commission, and why so?
Right now, it's difficult to recall the reports of other reports which came from different circles. But I'm sure Gandhi, as the on-crowned king of the Congress, greatly condemned this one. Tagore, for example, Indian nationalist leaders, they at one voice condemned what happened. Not only the people of Punjab, the entire country was very angry the way the British showed its indifference and callousness in handling the affairs of the Jallianwala massacre. And the Hunter Commission report was not appreciated. Everybody said this is just a eyewash, this is a whitewashing over a crime which is unpardonable, which is inexcusable for people who claim to represent democracy in the world, who claim to represent liberalism and all that is great politically valued in the context of democracy, civil liberty, and freedom of expression. I think the response to Hunter Commission was very, very negative and very, very conservative and not very appreciative.
And the protest, or we can say the meeting, was held to release Gandhiji and Dr. Satyapal Malik, Dr. Saifuddin from jail. So please tell us, sir, what was the reaction of Gandhiji after that incident?
Man, see, I told you that Gandhi literally and condemned it very, very disappointingly. He said, this Jallianwala massacre has shook my conscience and has torn me from a cooperator or a believer in British sense of justice and fair play to a strong opponent of the British Raj. And this was a turning point for Gandhi, because Gandhi was a votary of non-violence and love. And he was saying, don't hate the Britishers, hate British colonialism. So this man became very vocal critique of the way the British government imposed this kind of brutality on innocent people, and mostly at a time when everybody expected some kind of liberal reforms, some kind of sympathy for the Indian nationalist struggle. And therefore Gandhi said, I'm totally disappointed, and this is the most brutal satanic government, I quote Gandhi's words, satanic government on earth. And this can never be excused on any grounds, of morality and civil justice or any other official justification. So Gandhi was very disappointed. And then from them, he was gearing up to start a massive mass movement under the leadership of Congress. In fact, the first Gandhian mass movement called the non-violent, non-cooperation movement began immediately after the Jallianwala massacre took place, and whole country was getting ready to respond to Mahatma Ji's call for non-cooperation and to literally shake the foundations of British Raj in early 1920s.
So, sir, we can definitely say that this was one of the leading cause for the non-cooperation movement in the aftermath of the incident.
Yes, Alisa, true. Well, this was one of the most important causes. Though I told you the other causes like the disappointment over James Montague reforms, the Rowlatt Act and its kind of vindictive implications, and the Khilafat issue, the Khilafat movement which was building up after the First World War. So there are many regions, but Jallianwala massacre was the last nail in the coffin. It began to galvanize people to fight the anti-colonial laws and the way the people of this country became seriously convinced that you cannot expect anything from this brutal government which has shown brutality and arrogance of the highest order, and this has to be opposed. So please understand, the Jallianwala massacre was a very important incident which began to galvanize peoples of all political shade, all political persuasions as one people fighting the British in the non-cooperation movement.
Sir, although this was a heart-wrenching incident, but we see many leaders like Bhagat Singh coming up as byproducts of the incident. So can we say that this was beneficial for Indian independence movement? And if it was beneficial, then how much, sir?
Well, Mayank, if to call it a beneficial movement would be a paradoxical statement. Let me put it this way. You are asking what are the positive things about the Jallianwala massacre and its outcome. My answer to this question, Mayank, is, you see, Bhagat Singh, if you look at revolutionary nationalism in India and its development from late part of 19th century and early part of 20th century, you find there are two phases. One is called revolutionary nationalism phase 1, which began with some sporadic incidents of young nationalist, radical nationalists killing unpopular British officials. For example, Madan Lal Dhingra killing Curzon Billy, or say Chapekar brothers killing somebody, Khudiram Bose. You see, so before 1922, you can say from early or late 19th century, 1890s to 1920, that is the period when you say is the early period of revolutionary phase 1, where the revolutionaries were not very, even the Godharites for that party, Godharites for that movement. So the revolutionary nationalism phase 1 was something which was unstructured, which was not very organized, and these young radical nationalists were ultra nationalists, and they were trying to mobilize public fund, money, ammunition from abroad to wage an armed rebellion, but that was crushed. Okay, so but after 1920 or 22, when the Chauri Chaura incident took place, when Gandhiji called off the non-cooperation movement because of violence at Chauri Chaura in Gorakhpur districts of Uttar Pradesh, when 22 policemen were killed by a violent mob, Gandhi suspended the movement. So what happened? Many young nationalists like Bhagat Singh, Uddam Singh and all, these people got alienated from Congress-led, Gandhi-led movement. People began to feel, oh, Gandhi is not the answer to India's political problems. So what began after 1922, in the post-1922 phase, was revolutionary nationalism phase 2, where people like Bhagat Singh began to dream of a new India. Their political vision was very different from the earlier revolutionaries and the nationalists, and even from Gandhiji and the Congress-led movements. Therefore, when you look at when I ask your questions that Bhagat Singh was a byproduct of Jallianwala Massacre, I would say yes to some extent, because Bhagat Singh, Subhash Bose was there for a little more time, but people like Bhagat Singh, they began to think that Gandhian non-violence is not the answer to the present political scenario, and therefore the incidents like Jallianwala Massacre produced ultra-revolutionaries who began to think in terms of waging an armed rebellion. Remember, this was the time when Russian Revolution has become successful in 1917. This is the time when communism, socialism as two new ideologies were reigning supreme, and young people were being influenced by the leftist ideologies, communism and socialism. And therefore all these people like Bhagat Singh, they began to think in terms of giving a communist or leftist or socialist orientation to the Congress policies and the policies of the nationalist struggle. And therefore, you will find that one good thing is that, if you call it good thing, quote unquote, I will say that yes, that the Jallianwala Massacre created a conviction in the minds of the young, revolutionary, radical nationalists that yes, armed rebellion against the British would not be a wrong choice. And therefore, it justified to some extent the philosophy of the bomb or the philosophy of fighting an armed rebellion against the British Empire. And this is what Bhagat Singh were trying to do.
So we heard about Sardar Uddam Singh, and we also know that he killed Dyer in Britain. From British point of view, this was a pure act of terrorism, but for Indian it was a big relief, and from Indian perspective it was known as like the act of heroism. So sir, can you please tell us what led to this killing of Dyer by Sardar Uddam Singh?
Alisa, wonderful question. I want to dwell at some length on Uddam Singh. Uddam Singh is not a very popular hero beyond Punjab, though Uddam Singh is known to have killed. And this guy has a wonderful history. This man was an orphan, Uddam Singh. He's actually born in 1899, December end. And he was only 40 years when he was hanged by the British government. Now, Uddam Singh was born in a small village, and his mother died when he was only 3 years old. His father died when he was only 8 years old. And he was brought up in an orphanage. And he often visited that orphanage, and he had a strong sense of empathy. And he came in contact with Bhagat Singh and all these people, revolutionaries, and he began to appeal to the British government to join the First World War, to be enrolled in the British Indian Army. And in fact, in the First World War, he joined as a laborer in some part of the British Indian Army. But after 6 months, because of his tussle with the authorities, he was kicked out. He came back again to the orphanage, and again he went back to army. Again in 1918 he joined the army. Again he got disenchanted and came back to the orphanage again in Amritsar. And later on he began to join Bhagat Singh, and Bhagat Singh began to ask him to get mobilized for an armed rebellion. So this guy began to leave India and began to join the Gadharites and join the other overseas revolutionaries who are having same intention of fighting an armed rebellion against the British. So Uddam Singh's life is full of challenges. Uddam Singh's life was full of struggles, and this guy began to had some military experience, and he began to purchase guns from a public shop where he admitted during his interrogation after he was arrested in 1940. And Uddam Singh was only 40 years old when he was killed. And he managed to buy a ticket in his wife's name to enter into a public meeting being organized. But please remember, if you look at his diaries, he was a little confused. Who was this Dyer? Because yes, remember, Uddam Singh was present. History has proof that Uddam Singh was present when on the D-Day of 13th April 1919, when the crowd was protesting, the protest was going on, and Uddam Singh and his friend were distributing water to these people. Okay, so if you look at Uddam Singh's life, he saw people being killed. He survived. So from that day, he decided to kill and not an ambition to destroy. In fact, I want to tell you something very interesting. In Odisha, there is a beautiful poem written by a very prominent Odia poet called Radhamohan Godnaik. And Radhamohan Godnaik wrote a beautiful poem, Uddam Singh, and I want to cite. If you allow me, I will cite this because the listener, I want the Odia people here in Odisha to listen to a beautiful poem written by Odia poet Radhamohan Godnaik on Uddam Singh. Will I do that? Will you allow that?
We'll love to.
If you have little time, let me read out this poem, and say the poem I love, and look at the revolutionary fury that evoked in a poet in Odisha on the daring acts of Uddam Singh. This poem goes like that. Kavitar Shirsaka Uddam Singh. Kavi Radhamohan Godnaik. Janmada moro Bharat bhuir বহু দূরে সাথী বহু দূরে বন্দী মুয়াজি উদ্দাম সিং এই লন্ডন তারাপুরে সম্মুখে মোর ফাঁসি কাট শিখ সন্তান জনাউছি মুহি জন্ম মাটির জয় পাঠ অপরাধ মোর শুণ দেবে সাথী শুণ দেবে তরুণ অরুণ জীবনে মোহর মৃত্যু বলিছি কিয়া হেবে ঝড় বিপ্লব সংঘাতে নরহন্তা সেই ডায়ার বুকে গুলি মারিছি মু এই হাতে তুমে জানিথিব তুমে শুনিথিব ভাল করিব শুণ এইবার আমরি দেশর আমরি জাতির দুশ্মন সেই ডায়ার পঞ্চ নদীর অঞ্চলে রক্তর সুয়া বহিলা সেদিন জালিয়ানাওয়ালা ভূঁই তলে দুর্মতি সেই ও ডায়ার কিয়ে সে কহিব মଣିষ তাহাকু মଣିষ রূপে সে জানুয়ার তীব্র তেজরে সভা বসিଥିଲା ক্ষুব্ধ দলিত জনতার কথা উঠুଥିଲା বড় ধপাবাজ আম এ বিদেশী সরকার যুদ্ধকু আমি সম্পদ দেলু ঢালি দেলু লুহ ছাতি ধার आम दुर्दशा देखा टिके विचारे ना सरकार शासन नीतिर शोषण पेषण सहीबानी आउ पथापथि शक्ति एथर देखाइबा आमे लुहारे गढ़िबा एई छाती गुडुम गुडुम आवाज सुबिला हुकुम देइछि डायर अग्नि शिखारे की खेल खेलुच हुशियार एबे हुशियार बुलेट चलिला असुमारी भाग भाग होई छुटिले हठात तही थिले जते नर नारी झड़ी पोको भली धरा तले देबे झड़ी पड़िले मनीष दल दल छाती किल्लारे रंजित हला जालियानवाला भूई तल क्षिप्त व्यथित पंजाब सारा उच्चे तोलिला प्रतिवाद सरकार तही हुनकार देला नाज्य नुहे अपराध पंजाब सारा रणभूई हेला युद्ध आईन हेला जारी पथे पथे घुरी फौज कुदिले बेइज्जत हेले पुर नारी समन पराए दमनर नेला चलाइला आम सरकार परिशेषे जो प्रतिकार हेला तारी ना की प्रतिकार बहु दिन परे सेही कथा सुनी जली जली मुही छाती तले उद्दाम सिंह मुही गुली बसाइछि सेही डायर छाती परे एथि पाई आजि किए दाई अत्याचारी की हत्या करिमु होइछि खुनी आतताई जागी थिला जेउ बन्हीर लीला पंच नदीर माटी परे नयनरे तार देखि नथिली सुनिथिली मु खाली श्रवण रे प्रथम करी सुनिली जेदिन होई गली मुई स्तब्ध सते जड़ता को मोर कंपित करी थरी उठला मो महाजड़ अज्ञात आसी किए भरिदेला पथे मोर मोर गतिरोध विद्युत सम चित्त सुरिला प्रतिशोध खाली प्रतिशोध उन्माद सम छुटी गली मुही जालियानवाला भूई तले उत्कट एक उद्वेद मुही अनुभव कली अंतरे धोइलानी सेई प्रांतर छाती केते आषाढ़र बारिशर देखा गला मते प्रांतर छाती ताजा रक्त रे जर जर उन्माद परी सोहिली माटी रे तार तले जेउ लाभा थिला बन्हिता परे भरिदेला मोर स्पंदित शिरा उपशिरा चमकी उठिली मु से पथर धूली बोली हेली देह सारा जली गला मोर मर्म भीतर दुस्सह बड़ दुस्सह माटी रे मुठाए घेनी संभ्रमे चिपुडिली मुही जोर करी रक्तर रागे करताल मोर लोहित होइला जबा परी केउठी धोइबी एही दाग मोर केउठी धोइबी करतल धोई पारिब कि केउ सतलेज सिंधु झिलम नदी जल शपथ कली मु थरी थरी धोइबी नाही एही हात मुही रहिताउ या एही परी काहि रे होइब मनबद विद्युत समचित्त स्फुरिला प्रतिशोध खाली प्रतिशोध दुर्गम এই মহানগরীর রাজা প্রতিনিধি সভা ঘরে গোপনে পশিমু গুলি বসাইছি সেই ওডায়ার ছাতি পরে শহ শহ বাণ বদଳରେ মুই মারি ଅଛି সেই এক বাণ শহ শহ প্রাণ বদଳରେ মুই নেই ଅଛି সেই এক প্রাণ মাতৃভূমির ইজ্জত লাগি যাহা জীবନରେ ଅଛି সাথী আমার সরকার চক্ষুরে মু আজি আতাই মুই অপরাধী সম্মুখে মোর ফাঁসি কাঠ মৃত্যুরে আজি শুনাউছি মুই জন্ম মাটির জয় পাঠ এই কবিতা was written by Radhavan Godnaik. So this is how a Odia poet ventilated his angst against the British government by this poet.
So that's a wonderful poem, and definitely I'm going to add this to one of my favorite poem list. So in the context of Odisha, we see a very familiar incident which took place in 1914 called the Iram Massacre. So we would like to know more about that incident.
Yeah, because you see, the kinds of massacre that took place, it was not an isolated event. British government responded to the nationalist agitation through many such acts of brutality. And Iram Satyagraha in Odisha in 1940s was such a massacre where in Baleswar district, so many people have gone down at Iram. This is called the second Jallianwala massacre because a large number of people were gone down at Iram. So Odisha also had this legacy of fighting the British, and Iram Satyagraha is sometimes considered as the second Jallianwala massacre where so many people were killed in cold blood like it happened in Jallianwala.
So sir, lastly I want to ask you, what is your opinion about both the massacres? Not only Jallianwala Bagh, also Iram massacre. What is your opinion?
Well, to my opinion, I'll say that definitely the Jallianwala massacre incident was a turning point in the Indo-British relationship. After that, the British people were never trusted, and the kind of brutality that was exhibited in the great 1857 revolt from both the sides, like the British inflicting severe brutality on the Indians and Indians responding to that in a counter-violent surge. So these kind of things were repeated. And British were very angry that there should not a repetition of the Great War of Indian Independence or 1857 revolt. Therefore, if you look at the Jallianwala massacre which took place in 1919, it reflected the kind of violence and the counter-violence on both the sides, and this particular incident was a turning point in galvanizing people of India and understanding. This brought down the point, it drove home the point that British government cannot be trusted. This is the most brutal, undemocratic government in the world. And people were ready to sacrifice everything, their life, money, and every effort in the service of the country. Therefore, Jallianwala massacre was a turning point. And again, if you look at the kind of answers that General Dyer gave in the course of his interrogation after the incident took place, it was marking off a lot of racial arrogance and British indifference, and how brutal, how racial arrogant they were. And these responses were recorded, and the British public opinion was moved the way this insensitivity exhibited by Dyer. And my opinion regarding Iram and such kind of things was that British government wanted to show and to bring down the point that by terror or terrorizing common people, it is possible to maintain law and order. But that kind of a situation never remained true. And British government wanted the Indian army, which was basically a mercenary, whom the nationalistic messages of the national movement was not reaching. Because the British government tried to isolate the British Indian army from the nationalist upsurge that was going on in British India. And therefore, when such things happened, the army got a message that, look, this is the Sarkar we are serving. And naturally there was a lot of disenchantment. People began to feel our own people killing our own people in cold blood. This was something which was active. So to my mind, the legacy of the Jallianwala massacre was great in terms of turning the Indian opinion of the army, people and everybody against the British Raj. So in that sense, my opinion is that this kind of a incident was morally unpardonable and legally and officially inexcusable, and this really brought about a lot of change of attitude towards the British government. The brutality and racial arrogance exhibited by this incident was something which could never be excused, could never be pardoned, could never be disentangled from the national psyche of this country. I think that is my opinion.
So it was a wonderful talk with you, and it was such a great pleasure to have you here, sir. Here we come to the end of our questioning session, and Yes, we are so grateful to have you on our show.
Thank you. I'm really honored to be here in Ravenshaw Community Radio. I'm a teacher, so I all the love more history. And thank you, Ravenshaw Community Radio, and all the organizers for inviting me. Thank you so much.
Thank you, listeners, for listening us regularly and being connected with us. I hope today's session will enlighten you all, and you all will learn more things about Jallianwala Bagh massacre, and you all came to know about some unknown things or some hidden things which are not commonly known to others. And thank you, sir, for your time.
Remembering all the brave souls who laid down their life that day, we come to the end of our show. Stay tuned till the next episode of our show. And for any more queries, you can contact us on our Insta ID, Ravenshaw_radio. Till then, goodbye and good evening.
ठीक ठाक थिला कि जल्दी ले जाउछ कि बिकज एते क्वेश्चन लगे एते समय को थैंक यू अलिसा थैंक यू
Thank you so much.
किबा
सर फोटो
फोटो
सर ये सर को सिग्नेचर डन पे अब क्या रिकॉर्ड कर रहा है
खत्म हो गया
खत्म हो गया
ठीक है सर ठीक है
बढ़िया
अब तो शो हो गया अब डेली बढ़िया बढ़िया फोटोज ले लो ग्रुप में डालने चाहिए
कविता ठीक है कहली ना देखा रो है
ज्योति